Dr. Michael Barrett had learned long ago that medicine was about more than just textbooks and procedures. At 32, with kind eyes and a gentle manner, he understood that healing often came from the smallest acts of human compassion. The morning sun filtered through the hospital windows as Michael made his rounds in the intensive care unit. His white coat was crisp, his stethoscope draped around his neck. But it was his warm smile that patients' families remembered most. In room 412 lay Catherine Waverly, a woman of 68 who had been in a coma for 3 weeks following a stroke. The nurses had told Michael about her, a wealthy widow, they said, owner of a successful textile business her late husband had started 40 years ago. But to Michael, she was simply a patient who needed care. Catherine's daughter visited twice a week, always looking tired and distant. The rest of the time, Catherine lay alone, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed their steady rhythm. Michael paused at her door that Tuesday morning. Something made him look more carefully at the bandage on her arm where an IV had been. It was old, slightly soiled, changed perhaps too infrequently in the busy unit. "Let me take care of that," he said softly, though Catherine couldn't hear him. He gathered fresh supplies and returned to her bedside. As he worked, he spoke to her gently, the way his grandmother had taught him to speak to anyone who might be listening, even in silence. "Mrs. Waverly, I'm just going to change this bandage for you. Make you more comfortable." His hands were careful and precise. He cleaned the area with tender attention, applied the new bandage with the kind of care he would want for his own mother. "There we go," he said, adjusting her blanket. "That's better, isn't it?" As he smoothed the fresh bandage, something unexpected happened. Catherine's finger twitched. Then her eyelids fluttered, just barely. Michael's heart quickened, but he remained calm. "Mrs. Waverly? Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing. She looked confused, frightened even, as people often do when waking from a long darkness. "It's all right," Michael said, his voice steady and warm. "You're in the hospital. You're safe. My name is Dr. Barrett. You've been asleep for a while, but you're going to be just fine." Catherine's lips moved, trying to form words. "Don't try to talk just yet," Michael said gently. "Let me call the nurses. We're going to take good care of you." The next hours were a flurry of activity. Specialists came and went. Catherine's daughter arrived, tears streaming down her face. But through it all, Michael stayed nearby, offering quiet reassurance. In the days that followed, as Catherine regained her strength, she would often ask for Dr. Barrett. When he came, she would simply look at him with gratitude in her eyes. "You were kind to me," she finally said one afternoon, her voice still weak but growing stronger. "When I couldn't speak or move, I could feel it. Your gentleness, it gave me something to come back to." Michael smiled. "I was just doing my job, Mrs. Waverly." "No," she said firmly, reaching for his hand with her own trembling one. "You were doing more than that. You saw me as a person, not just a patient, not just someone in a coma." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I've lived a long life, doctor. Built a business, raised a daughter, lost a husband I loved dearly. I've learned that kindness is the rarest gift we can give each other, and you gave it to me when I needed it most." Catherine recovered slowly but steadily. 6 weeks later, she was well enough to go home. Before she left, she asked to see Michael one final time. "I want you to have something," she said, handing him an envelope. Michael shook his head. "Mrs. Waverly, that's not necessary." "Please," she interrupted. "Open it later." After she'd gone, Michael opened the envelope in the quiet of the staff room. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter written in shaky but determined handwriting. "Dear Dr. Barrett," it read, "this is not payment for your medical skill, though that was excellent. This is gratitude for your humanity. Use it for whatever brings you joy. Further education, a vacation, or simply peace of mind. What you gave me cannot be bought. But I hope this small gesture shows you how much your kindness meant. In a world that often feels harsh and hurried, you took time to be gentle. Never lose that. It's your greatest gift. With deep appreciation, Catherine Waverly." Michael sat for a long time holding the letter. He thought about his grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died, who had taught him that the most important thing in life was how you made people feel. He thought about Catherine, lying silent in that hospital bed, and how he had almost walked past her room that morning. How a simple act, changing a bandage, with care, had somehow reached through the darkness and called her back. The next week, Michael established a small fund at the hospital for patients who couldn't afford their care. He kept enough for himself to visit his grandmother, who was now in her 90s and living in a care home 3 states away. When he told her the story, she took his hand in her weathered one. "You see, Michael?" she said, her eyes bright. "This is what I always told you. Kindness ripples outward in ways we can never predict. You were kind because that's who you are. And now that kindness comes back to you so you can spread it even further." Michael continued his work at the hospital, still making his rounds with the same gentle care. He never told anyone about Catherine's gift except his grandmother. It wasn't about the money. It was about the reminder that the smallest gestures of human warmth could change everything. Sometimes, late in his shift, he would pause at the door of a patient's room, just as he had paused at Catherine's door that Tuesday morning. And he would remind himself that behind every diagnosis, every chart, every beeping machine, was a person who needed more than medicine. They needed to be seen, to be treated with dignity, to know that someone cared, and that, Michael had learned, was the truest form of healing. Years later, long after Catherine had passed away, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76, Michael would still carry her letter in his desk drawer. On difficult days when the hospital felt too busy and the world too harsh, he would take it out and read her words again. Never lose that. It's your greatest gift, and he never did. Because kindness, he had learned, was not just something you did. It was something you chose to be, every single day, in every small moment. It was the gentle touch that said, "You matter. You are seen. You are not alone." And sometimes, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, that was enough to call someone home.